I'm not going to lie. It can get a little lonely being passionate about something that most people don't want to think about, let alone talk about. Let me show you what I mean. Raise your hand if you are passionate about funerals. Yep. Once again, I am the only person in the room. And I really wonder why people forget to invite me to parties. But before you think I'm some crazy lady, let me clarify that it's not death and dying that I get excited about, because that really would be kind of weird, wouldn't it? But I do so love the work that I do as a life-cycle celebrant, creating all kinds of ceremonies to mark life's big and small moments. But I've always felt particularly drawn to funerals because I believe that done well, they can be so incredibly healing. So let me ask you to focus on the first words that come to mind when you hear the word funeral. Now let me share with you mine. Transformational, inspiring, uplifting, beautiful. Now, those are not the typical words that most people associate with funerals, but I believe they should be, and I know they can be. First, we have to talk about it. And I know what you're thinking, but Linda, if we talk about death, it might actually happen. Right? I know you do that. Well, I'm really sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but it's going to happen. In fact, it's going to happen with 100% certainty to each and every one of us. So shouldn't we talk about it? But Linda, we're all about being happy. We just want to be happy all the time. And if we talk about death and dying and funerals, we're going to be sad. Well, yeah. It's sad when someone we love dies. But grief is not a dirty word. Grief is the price we pay for love. And most will tell you that it's worth every single tear. Because a life without grief would mean a life without love. And what kind of life would that be? Death is as natural a part of life as birth. And birth, my goodness, we talk about that a lot, don't we? Yeah. We talk about it, we read books, we watch shows, we go to classes and we learn how to breathe. Something that I, for one, already know how to do, and I think that you do too. We have baby showers, we have gender reveal parties, we decorate the nursery. We have these things called baby moons. Have you ever heard of a baby moon? It's like a honeymoon that you go on before you have a baby. They didn't have those when I was pregnant. We talk of little else for 9 months at least. We spend so much time preparing for the beginning of life. Maybe we need to spend a little more time preparing for the end. But before we talk about the end, let's talk about the beginning. My beginning, because I really want for you to understand where my big why came from. I was born on December 24th, 1965. And being a Christmas Eve baby always made me feel extra special because I share my birthday with somebody pretty famous, right? You know who I'm talking about. And it was always kind of funny growing up because the only time I ever heard his name was when my mom spilled hot tea on herself or my dad ran out of whiskey. That never happened. We never ran out of whiskey in our house. You see, my parents, they immigrated from Scotland to Canada in 1961. And they left something rather significant behind. They left behind religion. Let's just say that growing up, they both had some rather unfriendly experiences with it. So they were quite happy to wave goodbye and leave it in Glasgow, which is where it remained. And I grew up in Toronto, which is an incredibly wonderful melting pot, rich in colors and cultures and religions. And I was exposed to all of that through my diverse circle of friends. And on Mondays especially, we would get together at school and we would chat about what we did during the weekend. And I would hear their stories about all the places they were going, off to church and off to synagogue and temple and mosque. And I could tell by the stories they were sharing that they were adding all these layers of depth and meaning to their life with the activities, the rituals, and the connection that they were having with their community. And it was like they were part of this mysteriously magical world, and I was just kind of looking in. And I was envious of them because they all had a place to go with their feelings, and I didn't have a place to go. Now, don't get me wrong, I had a really wonderful, happy childhood, but I always felt like something was missing. And I don't really know that it was God that was missing as much as it was that sense of community, that sense of belonging, that sense of believing in something bigger than my little world. And while I didn't have a formal place to go to experience what my friends were experiencing, I did have the four corners of my bedroom. And I did have a very vivid imagination. So when I wasn't dreaming about Donny Osmond, which was a lot of the time, I admit, I was busy inventing rituals and ceremonies to add meaning and depth to my life. I didn't really know that that's what I was doing, of course. Like, I didn't know, for instance, that every night when I wrote in my diary and made a conscious effort to focus on something really good that happened that day, and made a conscious effort to focus on something really good that I was going to make happen the next day. We call that a gratitude journal today, don't we? That was my nightly ritual. I didn't know that's what it was. I was just a little girl trying to fill a void that I think so many of us feel in life, and I've come to learn in death. About 10 years ago, I was chatting with a funeral director. And he told me about this current trend to not have funerals. And I was like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean not have a funeral? Don't we need to have a funeral? When someone we love dies, do we not need a place to go? Do we not need a place to go with all those feelings? Do we not need a place to go to be with people that care about us, that will support us, that will give us real hugs and not the virtual kind all over Facebook? Don't we need that? But he explained to me, he said, Linda, society has evolved, and many are becoming more secular, and traditional funerals for many people no longer feel relevant. They want something different. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because there was a time in society when fitting in was what we all wanted to do. Nobody really wanted to stand out. You just kind of wanted to blend in and be like everybody else. But now, we're encouraged to embrace all of those wonderful qualities that make us us, to live our authentic, true lives, to celebrate our uniqueness. So why would we want to have the same funeral as everybody else? And I knew at that moment that I could help those people. All of the random, seemingly useless skills that I had acquired throughout my life finally found a home. You see, ordinary cookie-cutter funerals no longer work. And I know you know what I'm talking about, because I know you've been to one of those funerals. And you probably drove home feeling uninspired, cold, and empty. And you probably got home and you said to your family, in order to spare them feeling that one day, you said, you know what? When I die, don't bother. I don't want a funeral. Don't do anything. But in doing so, you could be denying your family what they need after you're gone. Funerals don't have to be cold and empty. There is another way. A little creativity, a little thought, working with the right officiant, one who can guide you and listen to your stories and create a ceremony around those stories instead of taking a line or two and plunking them into a template that already exists. Sometimes life throws us situations and there are no words. There just are no words to sufficiently express how we're feeling. And that's when rituals can become such a powerful element in a funeral ceremony in particular. Now, for a lot of people, they hear the word ritual and they go, oh, that sounds really scary and uncomfortable and formal, but that's not what I'm talking about. For example, my mother loves music. She loves all kinds of music, but especially music that makes her want to dance. But my mother's favorite sound in the entire world is the magical pop of a champagne bottle being uncorked. When she hears that sound, she giggles like a toddler and she jumps as high as an 82-year-old with double hip replacements can possibly jump. And she says the same thing every time in her little Scottish accent, oh, I love that sound. And we always laugh. And we laugh even more when we open bottle number 2. So of course it goes without saying that my mother's funeral, well, there'll be lots of bubbly consumed. But what if I told you that we were going to incorporate a champagne popping ritual right in the ceremony? Picture this. Donna Summers playing Last Dance in the background. Next to my mother's casket will be a tray holding 2 bottles of champagne, 2 glasses, and a pen. My brother and I will each open a bottle of champagne, making that delicious sound that my mother loves so much. And we'll do our best to giggle, just as she did. We'll pour each other a glass, and we'll toast to a life well lived and well loved. We'll drink it very quickly because that's what she does. Maybe have a second glass because that's what she does. And then we'll write our names on the corks and we'll place them in the casket next to her. Maybe we'll try to dance. And we will be sad. And we will cry. But we will not feel cold and empty. We will not feel cold and empty because we will be surrounded by people who care about us. And we will honor and celebrate her life in a way that was all about her, nobody else. And that's the difference between a ceremony that has been printed from a template and a ceremony that has been crafted from a story. Transformational, inspiring, uplifting, beautiful. A good funeral, one that's authentic, full of rituals, music, symbols, and connection, can give our feelings a place to go. Now, you may never be as passionate about funerals as I am, and that's okay. But what I'd love for you to remember is that a funeral is not a gift you give yourself. It's a gift you give to those who love you. Because we all need a place to go.